Welcome to Eternal Journey, the podcast.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Eternal Journey. I am your host, Jedi, and this is going to be episode 4, where we're going to be going over the Defiance UnCommons set review. That's right. I'm going to be going through every uncommon in the new Set 5 Defiance and kind of giving you my limited evaluation of it. So let's get going. First things I want to mention our Patreon, patreon.com/EJ the podcast. So where you can give something back to the show if you are enjoying it, or if the content has kind of helped you improve your game a little bit, rack up some extra win percentage points, or just kind of entertained you on your drive to work. Definitely check it out. You can even help us decide on future podcast episodes, subjects. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's go right into our pack 1, pick 1, where we're going to be opening up a pack of the latest set, which in this case would be Defiance, and we're going to kind of go over evaluating which are the top 2 picks in the pack. So I have my pack here already open. We're going to start off with the commons. So first we have Rumbling Contraption. This is 7 power, no influence, 6/4 engine. It has Overwhelm, and when you summon it, exhaust Rumbling Contraption. So it comes into play and you can't essentially block with it right away. 6/4 for 7, even with Overwhelm, is pretty high costed. I'm not too excited about this card. 4 power or 4 health on a 7 power unit isn't really impressive. Easily trades. You're going to use it as a filler if you need something like a fatty or something in your deck. I'm not too impressed by it. So definitely not something I'm excited to first pick. Next up, we have Kosul Beastmaster, which is a 5/5 shaman for 5 power, fire, primal, and justice. So tri-faction common. There's a cycle of these. 5/5 for 5 with Overwhelm is a great rate. You're doing really well. It also has Renown. Play a Renown, i.e. when you target it with a weapon or a spell, you get play a 2/2 flying squirrel, which is great as well. Typically, you're going to get a 2-for-1 or trade up or something like that when you play something on Beastmaster. And a 2/2 flying body is great. That's a great rate. I like this card a lot. I do value it very highly. That being said, it is the pick right now, but I am a little hesitant to take a 3-color card or 3-faction card right off the bat, since we have no idea what the rest of the draft is going to look like. All right, next up we have Infused Guardian. This card is great. It is a 4/4 Sentinel for 5, 1 time, and influence. And it has Endurance and Pledge. So Pledge gives you a little bit of insurance of drafting several of these, because chances are you'll get one in your opening hand. You can always just use it as a power sigil. And it has Empower +1/+1, period. So permanently just keeps growing over time. I think this card is great. The fact that it has Endurance means it can attack once it gets big enough to attack, and it automatically still stays back on defense. I think it's great. This is probably going to be my first pick now, just because it keeps us fairly open. I like it. Like I said, I think Kosul Beastmaster is the stronger card overall, but 1 color versus 3 colors is a huge difference when it comes to our first pick. Next up, we have Research Assistant, a 1/1 Grenadin for 1 fire, and pay 2 and sacrifice Research Assistant to get 3 power this turn. So it ramps you 1 power for 1 turn, and when you summon it, you get either a time or primal influence. Not really excited about this card. I'm sure occasionally the 1-turn ramp will come in handy, but the fact that it's only for 1 turn, and you can't really decide, like, a 1/1 is not really oppressive body. Sometimes you just want the fixing for influence, but yeah, not very high. I'm still going to take Infused Guardian over it. Next up, we have Improvised Club. It is a relic weapon for 8, 1 shadow, and it is a +6/+6 relic weapon. I like this card. I feel like even at the 8 power, the fact that it gains you 6 life and can kill sometimes 2 3/3s or sometimes 3 smaller creatures, or kill a problematic flyer or something like that, is pretty legit. That being said, I am not a fan of taking an 8-drop right away. They're pretty replaceable. It is a common, so you'll see multiples of them throughout the draft. So yeah, not taking that. Next up, we have Spitfire, which is a 4-power, 1-fire relic. Pay 4 to deal 1 damage to an enemy. Not bad. It's not great. It does a bad impersonation of the Stormcaller and Primal, and that card does some work, so this card could do some work. Issue is there's no body attached to it, so it is a little harder to get rid of or remove, but paying 4 is not the same as exhausting, so it is a bit of a power sink. It's good in the late. It's better in the late game. Not good, but it gives you something to do with your power. Not a first pick, though. Moving on, we have Bleak Basin Guide. It is a 1/1 owl for 3. 1 time, 1 primal, or correction, 1 time, 1 justice, 1 shadow. And flying. And it has empower +3/+3 this turn. So on your turn, it has the potential of being a 4/4. And occasionally, if you have ways to cheat in power, it will be a 7/7 flyer. Once again, not very impressed with this card. Just the fact that the majority of the time it's going to be a 1/1 flyer for 3 just means I'm not too thrilled about it. Maybe if I'm in those colors, I need a couple of flyers. I have some weapons to put on it or something. That'll be solid. But yeah. And next up, we have Mass Entomancy, which is a spell for 4 power, primal, and transform a unit into a 1/1 humbug with flying. Amplify 4, which means you could pay for 8 or 12, transform an additional unit or 2 units into a 1/1 humbug with flying. So this is Primal's removal for the set, and I think it's fine. Typically, I would value removal fairly high, and this does pseudo get rid of just about anything. It does get rid of their special abilities. It gets rid of things like that. The problem I have with it is that any stat modifications such as a weapon on it does not go away, and you're giving it to now a unit that has flying, so it gives it some kind of evasion. So I was a little higher on this card initially. I've come down on it some just because of the fact that, yeah, it just sometimes the fact that the 1/1 is flying becomes very relevant. So I think I'm still going to take the Infused Guardian here despite it being removal, just because the Guardian kind of fits a lot more positions. All right, that is for our commons. Moving into our uncommons, we have Cautious Traveler. Cautious Traveler is a 2/2 Explorer for 1 fire influence. Cautious Traveler can't attack unless you have a Sentinel. Yeah, if you're in the aggressive deck, I can't really tell you how aggressive this format is just yet. So I'm hesitant to say that it is a high pick. Maybe later on in the draft, taking it like pick somewhere between 7 to 10 when we have a better idea of what our deck's doing. Sure, but not now. Next up, we have Defiance, which is a fast spell for 1 justice. Kill attacking 1 power, 1 justice. Kill an attacking enemy unit with cost 3 or less, or stun an attacking enemy unit with cost 4 or more. So it is removal. It is cheap removal. It is conditional. It will only remove a creature or unit with 3 cost or less. That being said, it's only cost 1 power, so it does kind of fill out the early game. You can keep it open fairly easy, and the fact that it does not care what the stats on the unit are. For example, you can have a 3 cost unit that, let's say, has 2 relics or 2 weapons on it, so it's huge. You can still kill it for 1 power. The stun is fine as well. It buys you some time. Once again, you're only spending 1 power to do this. I think Defiance is a solid pick because it's diversity. So it is removal, which I value highly, and the fact that it's fairly efficient. So I like it, and it keeps us open. So I think this is going to actually move up to be my first pick here, is going to be Defiance. Moving right along, we have Storm Spiral as our last uncommon. It is a fast spell, 3 power, 1 primal. Deal 2 damage to each unit and player. So this is pseudo sweeper. I say pseudo because it hits everything but only for 2 damage. So typically you'd be okay getting at least a 2 for 1 out of this. So, which is possible. I mean, especially if you have it in your opening hand, you can kind of delay your board a little bit and then take out 2 of your opponent's creatures or units. Late game, it could clear up a couple of random units in a stalled board state, or you can, it is a fastball. That is the other thing too. So you can attack, see which ways blockers glow, and kind of finish up your opponent's larger creatures, or use it on defense when you have favorable blocks. So it isn't bad. I'm hesitant to take it early. Reason being is there's an argument for it. You can take it early and adjust your deck so you are better equipped to deal with it, or it doesn't damage you as much as it does your opponent. But I also feel like you don't really know what picks you're getting, so I'm a little hesitant to take this early. I would prefer to take it a little bit later in the draft. So I think Defiance, with its versatility, is still going to be the pick, because I feel like you can always find a target for Defiance one way or another, versus Storm Spiral may or may not do its work. All right, well, we have our rare. It is Kosul Elite. It is a 3/2 Minotaur, 3 power, Justice. Your weapons can be played on units are fast. Your units that can be played on units. Your weapons that can be played on units are fast. So I can see the upside to this. You essentially are doing your +2/+2s and your, let's see what's in more, another common, +2/+3 weapons on units and using them as combat tricks, and then they stay afterwards, which does have a powerful effect. Taking it early, you could potentially value relics and or weapons higher because of that. But the 3/2 body for 3 is just fine. I'm not thrilled about it. I'm not over the moon. So I think it is powerful. I typically am not the biggest fan of pseudo build arounds. I think the payoff is okay. You add a couple of combat tricks to your pool. That being said, weapons typically aren't undercosted, so it's going to be slightly difficult to keep things up. Especially you have the more expensive equipment like the Kopesh that's 6 power. So yeah, I think I am going to actually stick with Defiance here. And then I think it would be between Kosul Elite and Infused Guardian for me. Would be my second pick my top pick if Defiance wasn't in the pack. But Defiance is just easily to put into decks. It fits in your curve everywhere, and it always has something to do. Unless you're winning. If you're winning, then you're ahead. Then by all means, it's just gonna sit in your hand. But I feel like that's a good position to be in. So yeah, that is our pack 1 pick 1. So I hope you got a little bit out of that. And with that, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into our set review. And let me just move things around real quick. Sweet. All right, cool. So we're going to start off once again in order. We're going to go, if you guys want me to start changing up the order, picking colors differently, then by all means just let me know and I will start to do that. But for right now, I'm going to maintain this color order because that's just the way it is on the website and I like it that way. It keeps consistent. So once again, I'll be rating things from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. 1 is stone cold unplayable. It's a constructed card. It is too much of a build around, or it just doesn't do enough to warrant putting in your deck, even as a last pick. And a 5 is a bomb that just straight up wins you the game, or it can get you turn the game around when you're behind, etc., etc. All right, the uncommons are notable. They're going to be uncommon, so you're not going to see as many of them, which typically means they're able to add a little more power to these cards, and when you're in the right deck, these cards can be very impactful. So we're going to start off with fire. First up, we have a bottoms up. This is a fast spell, 1 power, 1 fire, and give a unit a +2 attack this turn. You can amplify 2, so you can pay 3, 5, 7, and keep going, 9, to give a unit +2 this turn. So of note, you can give it to the same unit and pump it beyond belief if you have an unblockable or a flyer, something like that gets through, maybe something with overwhelm, or you could spread this across to your team. This will win the game sometimes and help you make a few favorable trade-ups, but aside from that, I'm not high on it since it doesn't really buff health. So you're not, unless your unit has quick draw and you're attacking, it's not really going to help you save anything. So you're just hoping to trade up or kill your opponent with it. I think it's a bit of a mediocre combat trick, so I gave bottoms up a 2. Next up, we have Cautious Traveler, which we just talked about in the pack one, pick one. For a 2/2 for one is a good rate in an aggressive deck, but not having it on turn one and actually needing the setup cost of having a Sentinel in play for it to attack can make it somewhat unplayable. I ended up giving it a 1. You will play it if you are that aggressive deck with mono 1 and 2 drops or mono 2 drops. You just have 10, 15, 1, 2, and a couple of 3 drops in there. You're very aggressive. You can snag some Sentinels that fit that. I think the new set does have some lower, cheaper cost Sentinels, but not really. I think maybe the lowest, cheapest Sentinel might be 3. So the 1/1 or 2/2 for 1 is only good if you get to play on turn 1 or maybe turn 2 at best. And the fact that it has some setup cost, I think you could do better with just a regular 2/2 that has no downside. So I gave Cautious Traveler a 1. Next up, we have Urn of Choking Embers, which is a cursed relic. So you place it on your opponent. It's 1 power, 1 fire. When the cursed player plays a unit, exhaust it. So this favors an aggressive deck. That being said, I don't know if it's that big of an effect. If you get to play it early when you're curving out and then you curve out on your opponent, I think it's solid. You kind of get, especially if you're on a play, you're essentially 2 turns ahead of your opponent, but drawing it late game, it just doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything in stalled board state. It doesn't really affect the board state all that well. If your opponent's playing a control deck, it's borderline a dead card. So yeah, I don't see wasting a pick on Urn of the Choking Embers, so I gave it a 1. Next up, we have Firemane Lioness. Firemane Lioness is a 2/2 elemental cat for 2 power, 1 fire. Amplify 2, so 4, 6, 8, 10. Play a 1/1 wildcat with charge. I like this card because it fits anywhere on your curve. You need it anywhere on the curve that you need it to. And sometimes late game, it could either get you there by spreading out your board or at least break parity with all the summon triggers if you have like enter the battlefield effects, like for example the Scattershot Yeti and things like that. And then at the baseline, it is a 2/2 for 2, which is completely playable. It rewards you for playing out all your sigils in the late game. So yeah, I mean, you play this for, let's say 6, you're getting 4/4 worth of stats. 2 of it is charge, and you're getting 3 bodies. So it's not bad. I favor Firemane Lioness quite a bit and put it at a 4. Reason being is it synergizes well with go wide strategies, and it fits everywhere. I don't think you're ever in a bad place to see it drawn it. You can even create a bunch of chump blockers for you. So yeah, I like Firemane Lioness. Next up, we have Plunder. Plunder is a spell, 2 power, 1 fire. Exhaust 1 of your units to create and draw 2 treasure troves. All right, and treasure troves is a spell, no influence requirement, 2 power, and draw a card. Nice and simple. For those of you that play Magic, it is similar to Clues. It seems like an okay way for Fire to have some card draw, which they typically don't. So the 6 power for 2 cards isn't horrible here, especially since it's an installment plan. You could do it whenever you have the open power to do it. I think that gives it a little bit of value and a little bit better late game or early game trying to hit your land drops. It is a good Renown trigger, that being said. So you have units with Renown that are beneficial. You can combo them off with this and get 2 cards out of it. So I do like Plunder. I think it's a solid pick. That being said, I still just gave it a 3. A slightly worse Wisdom of the Ancients, so to speak. But it works in the colors, and like I said, sometimes you get major benefit out of triggering Renown. Moving right along, we have Dune Painter. It is a 2/2 mage for 3 power, 1 fire. Your amplify costs are reduced by 1. Dune Painter can't reduce amplify cost below 1. So 2/2 for 3 is under par, but I think the potential for kind of just going off with amplifies outweighs that. It's a little bit better later in the draft when you have amplify cards. I think this card goes up in value because For example, if we just talk about the Fire Main Lioness, where your Amplify is 2, you have Doom Painter in play. Now your Amplify is 1, so you're paying 1 power for 1/1 cat with charge, and you could just go off. Like all of a sudden now, you're getting 1 power for 1/1 stats all the way up the curve. So if you play it for 9, you're seeing 9 power, 9 attack, and 9 health. So I think the upside to Doom Painter, especially with removal spells and things like that, just kind of really knock it out of the park. The body is unexciting. If you take it early enough, you can kind of prioritize Amplify spells now. It's easily splashable because it only requires 1 fire influence. So yeah, I gave Doom Painter a 4. I think it's a solid pick. All right. Moving along, we have Gilded Flames, which is a fast spell, 4 power, 1 fire, and deal 2 damage to an enemy. If a unit is killed this way, transform it into a treasure trove and draw it. So we're seeing kind of a similar theme where we're paying 4 power total for your actually I take that back. This is slightly worse than Plunder, just because you're paying 6 total for the investment to get a card and 2 damage if you kill the enemy. Gilded Flames is a little interesting. 4 power to do 2 damage isn't that impressive. There's minimal units that you're really going to want to be comfortable paying this much to get rid of. Maybe utility units or something that has high power, low health, or a flyer. You get the added bonus of drawing a card, even though you're paying 6 total for the exchange. So you're kind of replacing Gilding Flames. I'm not exactly sure how to play this card out just yet. I feel like there's, especially a common, we have Conflagrate, which is 3 damage for 2 power at fast spell as well. That being said, this is a fast spell, so you can attack it on to like combat damage from a unit and then kill something to draw the card. But I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I think 2 damage for 4 is just a lot to pay right now, even at fast speed. So I put Gilded Flames at a 3. All right, Hard Sight Cyclops. It is a 4/3 Sentinel for 4 fire influence. Amplify 2, exhaust an enemy unit. So of note, it does not have charge. So you're going to play it on, let's say, turn 6 and exhaust 1 unit. You're getting a 4/3 for 4, which is just fine. I think that's pretty standard, with the added bonus of maybe taking 1 or 2 units out for the turn if it's, turn 6 or turn 8, or maybe you ramped a little bit. I think it's fine. You'll play the 4/3 on curve just to have a 4/3, so I don't think you're hurting yourself by picking it up. It's also not something I'm uber excited about to really push me into the colors. So I gave Hard Sight Cyclops a 3. Like, it's going to do some work. It fits, like I said, your curve is a 4-drop just fine, and in the late game it has some minor upside, but it's nothing that I'm uberly thrilled about. So Ruckus Rouser is a 2/2 Oni for 4 and 4 power, 1 fire, and it has Renown. You get power this turn equal to double the cost of that spell or weapon. Not thrilled about this card. I really don't think it's that great. I gave it a 2. Reason being is, yeah, sure, you're going to have some explosive turns every once in a while where you get to play a decent weapon or spell on it, and then you kind of get a ton of power and get to use it. But the setup cost is, it's a 2/2 for 4, so it's going to be late game. Your opponent's going to it has to survive, because your opponent might have some ways to get rid of it if they're even scared of it. You have to have the enabler in your hand as well as the payoff, because worst case, one of the things that can happen is you have the payoff, like the large creature, large spell you want to play, but you don't have the way of renowning Ruckus Rouser, and then it just sits in your hand. Or the other way around, where you have the pump spell to essentially get that jolt in power, and then no payoff to capitalize on that. So too much setup cost. I give it a 2. Horde Leader, 3/3 Warrior for 5 power, 1 fire. When Horde Leader attacks, your other attacking units get +1 attack this turn. Renown, play a Barbarian Camp, which is a relic that I believe gives them +1 attack. Let me just double check. Yep. Your units have +1 attack, period, all the time. Static. So I think it's okay. Reason being is you're paying Of note, it gives your other units a +1 attack, so it doesn't give it to itself. And Renown only triggers one time, so you get the 1+1 to attack for everyone one time. It doesn't matter if you target Horde Leader several times. So you're getting a 3/3 for 5, which isn't great. Also of note is that it has to attack. So it's going to be a target, which can once again play well with Renown because your opponents are going to try to block it and get rid of it, and you can essentially pump it and keep it in combat a little bit longer and get stacking them to get +2 attack. But as stalled board state, it doesn't do much, and when you're behind, it doesn't help you out that much as well. In fact, it's overcosted when you're behind. So yeah, I gave Horde Leader a 3. I think it's going to be slightly win more card or a go wide strategy. So yep. Next up, we have Shingain Forge. It is a relic, 5 power, fire influence. When you play a unit, create and draw a +2/+1 weapon. Though it is a 5-drop that doesn't affect the board, it has the potential to upgrade all your units, large or small, and could play with the weapon synergies. So, like, I actually really like this. You are taking a turn off to make it happen. But like I said, it upgrades every single one of your units. So any small units, you could put the weapon right on them right away. Any larger units, it just makes them essentially too big. And if you have, it helps trigger Renown. So every unit automatically has the ability, a way to trigger its own Renown. You can just kind of steamroll with the game. If you have a unit with evasion, you can just keep placing these on them. I think it has high potential. It is not favorable when you're behind, and it doesn't really do much in development because obviously it's a 5-drop. But I think that it really, really can run away with the game and kind of help upgrade, like I said, at the very least, all your units. So I actually gave Shingain Forge a 4. It just has too much synergy and upgrade potential, like I said. So I like it a lot. Next up, we have Sun Scorched Elemental. This is an Elemental 6/2. 6 power, 1 fire. It has Reckless and Renown. Play 2 3/1 Flame Fangs with Reckless. I'm not too thrilled about this card, and the biggest thing is the fact that it's 2 power or 2 health. It trades down a lot, and the fact that it has Reckless means you have to attack with it, so you can't even leave it back on defense to try to trade up or even with it. Yes, it makes it a very good target for Renown because your opponent is going to try to chump block it with something, or not chump block it, but block it with something small with just 2 power to essentially take it out, and you could use combat tricks to get some major value. Now you're talking about getting 12-4 worth of stats, but I think it's a little too fragile. It is also a 6 power investment for something that can be easily killed by a decent amount of removal in the format, including a red common. So yeah, I gave Sun Scorched Elemental a 2. And the last card in Fire is Forgeborn. It is a 7/7 Sentinel, 7 power, triple fire influence. It has Overwhelm, Pledge, and then you can pay 9 to give Forgeborn +2 attack this turn for each of your units. It's a finisher. The fact that it has Pledge makes it a little more bearable into taking a 7-drop. That being said, 7/7 for 7 I think is solid stats. Their time has the 8/8 for 8, which I think it does not compare. 7 and 8 is such a huge gap in power. You're not going to play your 7 on your 7 turn. You're not going to play your 8 on your 8 turn. It's closer to like 8 and 10. So yeah, I think Forgeborn is fine. The fact that it has Overwhelm is really good because you're kind of capitalizing on having a large body. And occasionally that, you're paying 9 for that ability, but the fact that it is not an ultimate, you can repeat it. Not that I think your opponent's going to let it last very long if you are doing this. So it stacks very well with the Overwhelm. And if you have a stalled board state, this is going to push through, either essentially killing your opponent or taking out a bunch of blockers while they try to stay alive and take this out. So I think Forgeborn is a pretty good finisher. That being said, it doesn't win you the game on the spot. And it is a 7-drop that I think is still pretty interchangeable. So I gave it a 3. All right, well, that covers red. I think fire has some decent playables in it. A couple cards that really can kind of put you over the top. So, yeah, pretty solid overall. All right, next up we have time. Time starts us off with Dissociate, which is a 2-power, 1-time fast spell. Negate an enemy spell and put it into the enemy hand, or put an enemy attachment into the enemy hand. Then increase its cost by 3. So Disassociate is a tempo play. It being a fast spell does help it get some value, but it not hitting units makes it much less of a tempo play, even with the tax on the cost. So placing equipment or weapon on a unit and then bouncing it back into their hand, make it more expensive, could affect combat. You could use it as a pseudo combo trick if you have something that all of a sudden is big enough to block or trade with your opponent's unit, but you're essentially still kind of down a card because they're still going to be able to replay it. Same thing with negating the enemy spell. That being said, once again, if they're counting on a combat trick, you can kind of pseudo win combat that way. If you make blocks, they use the combat trick and stuff like that. So it's not a complete worthless card. That being said, I also think the fact that they're getting the card back in their hand, even if it is taxed, puts a little less value on it. Like I said, I just mentioned a couple of situations where it might be beneficial and you could technically get a card out of it. So that being said, I gave it a 3. Like I said, I would have almost aired it on the side of 2, but the fact that it's a fast spell, so you can use it to potentially win certain combats and things like that, I think are very beneficial. So yeah, moving along, we have Locust, which is a 2/2 flying insect for 2-power, 1-time. This is a solid card. It's a great body for the rate as far as flyers go, because you normally get a 2/2 for 2. The fact that you're getting a bit of evasion on this 2/2 makes it a solid pickup. That being said, though, a 2/2 even with flying isn't that exciting, so I gave Locust a 3. You'll want it in your deck. It's a solid card, but I wouldn't hold it against you if you didn't quite pick it highly, though I do think it is a solid pick. Next up, we have Porcelain Mask, which is a relic, 2-power, 1-time. Your units have Overwhelm. Summon, silence a unit in enemy hand. I feel like even though you're able to silence something, here's the thing. All right, you're spending a card to potentially just give all your units Overwhelm, which is only beneficial when you're attacking and if you have larger units. The other thing, which granted time is the faction with the best kind of units, but still. And then summoning something or silencing something in your opponent's hand. You could time it correctly, wait till turn 4 or 5 till you can silence something potentially like dangerous, but at the same time, you can't say what's in your opponent's hand unless you obviously have the ability to bounce a unit back in their hand and then silence that specifically. But now you're talking about too much of a setup cost. So I think it's not quite enough upside for spending a card. Obviously, it is a relic, so there are some relic matter synergies. But yeah, you have too high of a chance on whiffing. So I give Porcelain Mask a 1, unplayable. Next up, we have Resolute Monk, which is a 3/1 Mystic, 2-power, 1-time. It has Empower, +2/+2, and Overwhelm this turn. This card seems solid to me. A 3/1 for 2 is fine. We see that quite a bit in these sets. It will sometimes trade up for a unit, something that has 3 health, and you can take it out with your 2-drop. That being said, I have also seen this card be a complete blowout. When you can get it down on turn 2, you're on the play, and you just keep triggering it, so it becomes a 5/3 with Overwhelm. Your opponent's hard-pressed to deal with it. And if at the very least it's going to get in there for 5, sometimes even 7 or 8 if they end up blocking it, but the Overwhelm takes over, or even 12, 13 range if they really don't have a solid answer for it. So I think it is a really good pickup. Once again, worst case scenario, you get a 3/1 for 2, which is just okay. So I give Resolute Monk a 3. Once again, I could see this guy stealing the game and kind of running away with it. If you build momentum, you have a couple of combat tricks to keep him alive and just put your opponent on the back foot. But I always like to look at things at down the middle. Like, what if they're great? What if they're horrible? And so I gave Resolute Monk a 3. But like I said, it does have potential to take over the game. Next up, we have Sustaining Harp, which is a 2-power, 1-time fast spell. You gain 2 health. Amplify 2, you gain an additional 2 health. Yeah, I'm just going to give it a straight 1. I don't, even with health gain matters cards, I don't think there's enough payoffs in the set to make a card that just gains you life be relevant, even at a fast speed. I could be wrong later on. We'll see how the format develops and things like that, but I feel like there's so many other cards that incidentally gain you life or armor or something like that you don't necessarily need to spend a card exclusively on that. So once again, Sustaining Harp gets a 1. Up next, we have Mesmerized Moth. It is a 1/2 insect for 3 power, 1 time, with flying. And it says summon, create, and draw a ancient bauble. So right here, we have another way to potentially gain life through the bauble. I think this card is okay. Reason being, a 1/2 for 3 flying just isn't that exciting. I don't think it does enough to affect the board. We've seen a lot of flyers with 2 power, so this thing will die easily. It can chump block. It gives you a relic, but the problem is Ancient Bauble, unless you're really kind of capitalizing on the life gain and having good synergies with it, isn't that impressive either. It just kind of fills out your curve. If you have an extra power laying around on a turn, you can use it to gain a life. So overall, I gave Mesmerizing Moth a 2, just because even with 2 cards in 1, I don't think either card is impressive enough to kind of warrant it being a high pick. That being said, it's okay being a filler. I wouldn't fault you once again for playing it like that. All right. Next, we have Eternity Core. It is a 4 power, 1-time relic, and it simply gives you max 2 or plus 2 maximum power. So there's one deck, and one deck specifically, that wants this relic, and that is the ramp deck. The time splashing some other color, or dual color with time, essentially trying to ramp into your higher drops, your 6, 7s, and 8 drops. So ramping from 4 to 7, it could be a huge play. Like, that really opens up the gap. For your large drops, we've seen already some impressive 7, 8 drops. So this kind of essentially played on turn 4, maybe on turn 3 if you have some other ramp earlier in the turns. But essentially it goes from 4, it bumps you up to 6, and then you play another power next turn, so that puts you at 7. That could be a huge swing, and let you kind of drop bigger creatures, more efficient creatures, and effective creatures than your unit than your opponent. But at the same time, if you don't have that payoff the next turn, if you don't play it on turn 4, it just doesn't give you. It just doesn't do anything. If you play it on turn 6 and you go from 6 to 8, let's say, it's fine, but not exciting. There's also a chance that you could. Everything works out perfectly. You play it on turn 4, and then you just have a 5 drop the next turn anyways. So the fact that I feel like it doesn't really impact the board, it's only really helpful in the development phase. It doesn't do anything at parity, doesn't do anything when you're behind, and doesn't do much when you're ahead already. I gave Eternity Core a 2. Like I said, some decks will want it. If you kind of want to go that maximum overdrive and go high cost and stuff and ramp, then that will fill your curve out, but I'm not very high on it. Moving right along, we have Maddening Whisper. It is a 4 power, 2-time fast spell. Put an enemy unit into its owner's hand. Amplify 2, put an additional enemy unit into its owner's hand. See, now we're talking. Being able to straight up bounce a creature, potentially bounce 2 units back into your opponent's hand, really, really sets you up for a solid tempo play. If you're on the attack, it can help you save some of your units from combat should you block favorably and then they have a combat trick and they burn the combat trick. The fact that you can use it on 4 or 6 or even 8 to, say, bounce all your opponent's blockers. I think this card has good versatility. And once again, it being fast is huge. That being said, you are paying 4 for this right up front, which is very difficult to leave up and your opponent not notice, or at least to kind of bounce out in your curve. So it's only the tempo that you gain from is only so much because you are spending quite a bit of power to use it. So I gave Maddening Whisper a 3. I think it's good. It's going to win some games. It's sometimes going to sit in your hand because you don't have a good opening to use it. So once again, I think it's a solid filler, but I'm not too high or low on it. Next up, we have Pompous Historian. It is a 3/3 Explorer for 4 power, 2 time, and it has potential to draw you a card for 1 power, which is a good rate. It's because you're getting a 3/3 for 3, and then you're paying the extra, the 4th power essentially to potentially draw you a card. I would want at least 6 targets minimum for it to be effective. We are playing with a 75 card deck. Hopefully by the time you played this, you're probably down to about 60, low 60 cards in your deck. So looking at 5 cards is a lot. But like I said, if you only have 1 or 2 Sentinels, chances are this thing is not going to draw you a card. So I would be kind of wary about taking it too early in your draft, but later on, I think it's fine. So I gave Pompous Historian a 3. Worst case scenario, ground floor. It's a 3/3 for 4, which is not the best rate, but it's not horrible. So yeah, all right. And moving right along, we have Temple Artisan, which is a 2/2 Elf Mystic for 4 power, 1 time. It has Pledge, so if you have it in your opening hand, you can play it as a time sigil. And then in power, double Temple Artisan's attack and health this turn. I would have liked this card a lot more if it was potentially permanently, but the fact that it's only this turn means that best case scenario, you find a way to cheat out a 2nd power on a turn. So it triggers 2/2 to 4/4 and then 4/4 to 8/8. There is that 1/5/6 Sentinel that could put a sigil into play. And there are a couple of renowned triggers that put sigils into play, but typically you're going to be, or if you have the ramp spell, but typically you're going to just be playing this, making it a 4/4. And that being said, the ground floor, even with the Pledge, just having a 2/2 for 4 is an absolute horrible rate. So I'm not impressed with Temple Artisan. I gave it a 2. All right, our next unit is going to be Twin Fang Cobra, which is a 2/1 Serpent for 4 power, 2 time, and it has Deadly. And then Entomb, create and draw a +2 attack Viper Fang with Deadly. So I like this card. I like the fact that it gives you the ability to potentially take out at least 2 creatures, and you also have the chance of putting the second Deadly, i.e. the Viper Fang or the Relic, on a flyer. So if you have, for example, in time, we have the 1/4 flyer. If you can put it on that, now you're talking about 3/4 flyer with Deadly. It makes every other unit, if you have a lonely 1/1 sitting around, you can put that on it and make it to another kill spell. So I like it. I like the fact that it has a little bit of resistance against removal. So if you play it, they find a way to kill it. You essentially get back another form of Deadly to slap onto another unit. So it's almost guaranteed to be a 2 for 1, even though the front end of a 2/1 for 4 power isn't exciting. The fact that, it just, chances are it's always going to be a 2 for 1. Puts it up there for me. So I'm actually going to give Twin Fang Cobra a 4. It's right up there with semi-efficient removal. All right, next up we have Ancient Excavator. All right, this guy is a 4/6 Sentinel for 5 power, 2 time, and it says summon, draw a relic from your void. I am less inclined to put value onto the summon ability because as of right now, I don't see a lot of people running a bunch of relic hate. So unless you have a way of milling a relic into your void, most of the relics you have are going to stay around. So I don't see a big use of that, especially if you play it on curve. So let's look at the vanilla test body, and 4/6 for 5 is good. I think it's okay. It blocks really well. It can potentially attack in some boards, but it will definitely slow your opponent down. In fact, it might even be ahead of the curve. Typically, we see some 4/6s with slight upsides at 6. So you're potentially can catch up if you're on the play, and if not, you're ahead of the game on the draw. Or correction, you can catch up if you're on the draw, and you're ahead of the game if you're on the play. So I like Ancient Excavator. That being said, it's not very impressive, so I gave it a 3. It's a good curve filler. And last for time, we have Confiscate, which is a 5 power, 1-time fast spell. It says kill an enemy attachment, draw a card. Man, so we just finished talking about Excavator to get back a relic. Killing an attachment, especially with all the relic matter things that we see going on, is slightly more like prioritized slightly more. That being said, even with it drawing you a card, I'm not too excited about spending 5 power to kill an attachment. It is a fast spell, so that kind of helps a little bit. I guess if you have other fast spells you can leave up or combat tricks, you can wait, and if you don't have a reason to use it, then you can confiscate to essentially do that. It can win combat once again. If they have a solid weapon on a unit and they're attacking into you, you can block unfavorably, then destroy it, get the card back, and eat up their card. So there is some potential here. I think I'd want to wait to see how the format plays out, because once again, any kind of combat trick or fast spell that's just this expensive is very difficult to leave open. And when you do, sometimes your opponent can pick up on that read, or you're just taking a turn off to leave it open and you might not get your value out of it. So I gave Confiscate a 2. So yeah, that was time. And not too bad. Some solid creature or units in there. A little bit of advantage and card advantage and stuff, but nothing over the top. A little bit of ramp as well. Next up, we're going to be moving into Justice. All right. Justice. And here we're going to start with the namesake of the set, Defiance. Defiance is a 1 power, 1 justice fast spell, and it has 2 options, 2 modes. First one is kill an attacking enemy unit with cost 3 or less. Or you can stun an attacking enemy unit with cost 4 or more. It's a very efficient removal spell. Even if it doesn't get rid of everything, it deals with a lot because of its versatility. And like I just said, the downsides of our previous tempo spells costing so much, this one is actually extremely cheap, which is 1. You can leave this open very easily. And you also, it is in the same color as Finest Hour. So your opponent, even if they do pick up on you having something, they have to decide between 2 spells that work entirely different. So it in of itself has some difficulty to play around. And like I said, it may not kill large creatures, but it will stun them if that's all you have. But most of the time, you'll be able to use it somewhere in your curve to kill a small unit. Of note, it only cares about the cost of the unit, not the size of it. So if they play a 2-drop and end up pumping it to a 7/7, you could still kill it with Defiance because it is still considered a 2-cost spell. So yeah, Defiance is really solid, efficient removal. I gave it a 4. Next up, we have Svetya's Bravery. Setya's Bravery? Not quite sure. Yeah, just roll with me on that one. So this is a 1 power, 1 justice fast spell. And it give one of your units a +1/+1 this turn. If it's wielding a weapon, it gets Aegis. I'm kind of on the fence of this one. +1/+1 is just okay, even for 1 power. It makes it very narrow on the kinds of combat that it'll help you win. It has to be something like, a 3/3 into a 4, or not even like pretty much equal units smashing into each other. I think you might value the Aegis ability a little more than the +1/+1, but once again, you have to have its required, or the setup cost is for the unit to be wielding a weapon, which once again, Justice does have high synergies with weapons, but I mean, how many are you really going to have in your limited deck? Like what, 2, 3, maybe 4 if you're kind of that deck, and then it has to be on a creature you want to save, etc., etc. 1 is easy to leave up, and it has a little bit of versatility, i.e. potentially eating up a kill spell, but I'm just not too high on it. I don't think it does enough to cover enough angles for it to be extremely useful, so I gave Svetya's Bravery a 2. Next up, we have Axe Sharpener. This is a 2/3 Minotaur for 2 power, 1 justice, and it has Entomb, create and draw a copy of each Axe Sharpener, or each weapon Axe Sharpener was wielding. I actually like Axe Sharpener, and the reason being is a 2-3 for 2 is great. Like, that's awesome. It blocks well. It can sometimes get in there and attack. I think it's very good body. Easy to play. You don't, because it's only one influence requirement. I like this Entomb. It gives you a bit of insurance where you're not kind of worried about putting a weapon on a unit and getting blown out on a 2 for 1 or 3 for 1 because you get them back. So that being said, you do want to play them in a window where your opponent can't react to them, which actually I believe I'm almost 100% positive that in Eternal you can't react to weapons being equipped. So that's safe. That's a little bit of my magic background timing coming in to play. So I actually like it. I'm not thrilled about it. Taking it early, once again, you don't know how many weapons you're taking. It is still just a 2-3. So let's say you put the 2-2 on it, it becomes a 4-5, which is great. 4-5 on turn 3 is solid. And if they do kill it, you get all your weapons back. So you're almost incentivized to kind of Voltron and put multiple weapons on this guy because you'll get him back, or her, on her. So I think it's great. That being said, I don't see any major combos with it and stuff like that. So I gave Axe Sharpener a 3. I think it's a above average curve filler. I like it. I would have no problem taking it. Next up, we have Chancellor's Horn. This is a 2 power, 1 justice relic, and it says Empower. Gain 1 armor. After the 5th use, sacrifice Chancellor's Horn to draw a unit of your choice with more health than attack from your deck. So, here's the thing. Best case scenario, you play it on turn 2, and then you're going to trigger it on turn 7 or 8. And then you get to find your one good creature, and the stipulations of it having more health than attack kind of limits it. It may or may not be your bomb rare. It might just be a creature. So I think the setup cost and the pay is too much. The payoff is not there, or not the setup cost, just the delay on it. You have to wait 5 activations before this thing triggers, and you may have drawn your one guy that fits this criteria by that point. So yeah, Sarah's Beacon Chancellor's Horn. Chancellor's Horn gets a 1 from me. All right, we have a weapon now. It is Fur Hat, a +1/+1 weapon, 3 power, 1 justice, and summon, draw a justice sigil from your deck. So the big thing here is that you're essentially paying 2 power to draw a justice sigil from your deck. You are not playing it, so it's not ramp. Giving a +1/+1 to a unit isn't that exciting. That being said, it will trigger Renown if you really want it. I think it's okay. I went ahead and just gave it a 2 because I feel like there's better ways to fill out your curve. Once again, if you are that deck that really wants to make sure you hit your sigil plays, but more importantly has a bunch of Renown triggers, then I would value Fur Hat slightly higher. I could even put it into the 3 range where it's a solid pickup, but in a vacuum, I'm not too excited about playing it. I think you really want to have additional payoffs than just have this card on its own because of what it does. Cool. All right. Next up, we have Seraph's Beacon. This is a 3 power, 1 justice relic. When you attack with 3 or more units, play a justice sigil from your deck depleted. Okay, so this has the potential of being a ramp spell multiple times. It is not an ultimate. It will trigger every time you attack with 3 units. Now, it also has a summon ability. Play a 1/1 district infantry, which is a 1/1, and then every time you play a sigil or empower, it gets a +2/+2 to become a 3/3. I feel like in limited, that's not going to be a thing. Paying 3 for a 1/1 is not exciting, even if it has the potential of becoming a 3/3, because chances are your opponent's going to have something better already. And sometimes you're not in a very good position because a lot of limited is just 2 mid-range decks battling out each other. You're rarely going to be in a position where you can attack with 3 units unless you're kind of like the Flyers deck. I think Seraph's Beacon will gain a little bit more value or priority, but I just don't think anything of this card is all that impressive. So I'm giving Sarah's Beacon a 1. It might be a little bit better and constructed where you can give more of a push and kind of keep your curve low, etc., etc. But yeah, I'm just not excited about Sarah's Beacon. All right, moving right along. Next up, we have Steel-Eyed Pistolier. It is a 3/3 gunslinger. She is 3 power, 1 justice, and it has renown. Steel-Eyed Pistolier deals double damage this turn. So, right off the bat, in a vacuum, 3/3 for 3, solid, great. It's a good rating. I'll take it. The additional part to it, the renown trigger, I think actually is quite impressive. Reason being is we are living in a world where there's Saddle Up, there is another uncommon that we're going to talk about here, there is Finest Hour, and there are weapons. So you have ways of essentially for just having one blowout turn. If you combo this off with Shadow, you have the chance of giving it unblockable and for a turn and lifesteal and all this jazz. So I could easily see Steel-Eyed Pistolier kind of getting 1 or 2 pump spells on it and coming in for 10, 14 damage, And so I do like Steel-Eyed Pistolier, but once again, my rating system is based off of it on its own in just the middle of the rung. I think it's fine in pretty much every stage of the game. So I'm giving it a 3. It does the major upside to it is just having that one blowout turn, which sometimes is a Christmas Wonderland. So I'm not going to value that too highly. It just has the potential of being really good and pretty much winning you the game. All right. So once again, Steel-Eyed Pistolier gets a 3 from Jedi. Another unit we have is a Auric Weaponsmith. She is, wow, a lot of females in this artwork. She is a 3/3 Minotaur for 4 power, 1 justice. And when you play a weapon, it gets a +1/+1. 3/3 for 4 is a little overvalued. We've explained that before, especially just seeing a 3/3 for 3. But most weapons could be huge with just that slight upgrade. I would want at least 5 weapons in my deck to kind of make it somewhat suitable, because then you have the chance of getting 2 triggers off of it. So you're essentially getting 5 worth of stats off of 4 power. So that's a good rate. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for. It really does. Like giving, for example, Auric, the Warhammer, making it a 5/3 can potentially, or 5/2, I'm sorry, potentially means you can get in, kill many more creatures, because 5 is a larger power and more significant than 4, but also the fact that you have a higher chance of getting a 2 and 3 for 1 off of it is just great. That being said, also works with that simple 2 power 2/2 weapon, Argenport sword. I'm having to have all the names memorized again still, so I apologize for that. But you have this in play, all of a sudden it's a +3/+3, permanent +3/+3 for 2, so it's really solid. So I think Auric Weaponsmith is a solid pickup, but it's not huge, it's not bomb, so I gave it a 3. I think it has enough upside that if you have the weapons to support its triggers at least 2 times, you'll get your money's worth off of it. All right, next up we have Loyal Falcon. This is a 2/4 bird, 4 power, justice, flying, endurance, and pledge. I like this card. I like this card a lot because I feel like it does all the things you want it to do. It is 2 attack is great. It kills a decent amount of things. It's a lot better than 1, believe it or not, even though if it's a huge gap on what it can kill, especially in the air. So I like that. 4 power means it's going to survive a good amount of combat. It has evasion built into it. The endurance means it can attack when it's ready to and still stay back to block. And it has that insurance policy of pledge. So if you happen to have it in your opening hand and it doesn't look all that great, you can play this for a sigil and kind of balance out your hand. So I think it's flexibility, even though the card is not super great on any one level. The fact that it kind of fits so many roles and does them fairly well, I gave Loyal Falcon a 4. It's great with weapon synergies. Yeah, it's just great all around. Once again, it's not mind-blowing. You're not windmill something think you got there, but I think it's a very solid pickup, so I went ahead and gave it a 4. All right, our next card is Pistol Whip. It is a 4 power, 1 justice spell. Give one of your units +2/+2 this turn and stun an enemy unit. Yeah, it's not a fast spell. That's the issue I have with it. So you're paying 4 to make one of your units bigger, which is relevant, and you're stunning one of theirs, which it's a slight tempo play, but it's not evasion. It's not giving your unit flying. So there is a chance you can stun their biggest unit, but your guy may or may not be big enough to get through the rest of the blockers, or you might want it to get in there for the kill shot and they still have something to chump block with. So I'm not too impressed with Pistol Whip. I think every once in a while it might outperform, but I'm not excited about it. So I give Pistol Whip a 2. All right, this next card I am kind of excited about. I think it has the potential of being really good. And this is a Rallying Banner. It is a 5 power, 1 justice relic. And it says, once per turn, you may pay 2 to give one of your units +1/+1 this turn for each of your units. I think this card is absolutely great, and I'll tell you why. I think it breaks parity. All right, if you guys are seeing installed board states and you each have 5-6 creatures on the board, all of a sudden now you can start swinging in with your 2/2s for that become 6/6s and 7/7s. If you have a flyer, you can pump your flyer and get your damage. It's wonderful with unblockable units. I think it's great. That being said, it has to be in a position where you can attack, but sometimes, hey, putting all your eggs in one basket and attacking one unit is enough to either start forcing your opponent to chump block or maybe make unfavorable blocks to get guys off the board, because there's only so much damage they can take. So it can really help break parity. Obviously, it's 5 power, do nothing the turn you play it, unless you're at 7 or 8 power. So during development, it might not be that great. When you're behind, obviously you're in trouble. Unless you have like a lifesteal unit, you can just pump that lifesteal unit and get in there. And then when you're ahead, it just kind of like steamrolls the opponent. So I think Rally Banner has a lot of potential to be great. I could be wrong, but once again, I just feel like in limited, there's the majority of the time you will reach somewhat of a stalled board state. So, this will break it wide open. So yeah, I gave Rallying Banner a 4. Very high pick for me. That being said, I wouldn't want more than one in my deck. 2 5 power do-nothings is a little much, I think. Though that being said, I could see that if you have 4 units and you have 2 of these, now all of a sudden your units are getting +8/+8. That's huge. But yeah, once again, magical Christmas land. All right, next up we have Warband Skald. It is a 3/4 warrior for 5 power, 1 justice. And Warband Skald has Warcry for each of your units. So right off the bat, it has Warcry 1 for itself. And once again, if you have 2 other units on the board, it counts itself, so it has 3, Warcry 3. And anyone knows, if you've seen that rare mace that triggers Warcry 3 one time, that's enough to make a big impact on the game. That being said, there's always the chance that you don't draw your Warcry unit and stuff like that. That does happen. But, I think you get in one good swing with this guy, and it's going to make a difference in the game. And even if you just have one other unit, Warcry 2, a 3/4 for 5 is a little under par. They definitely put value into the Warcry, which is a signal, because like I said, you have the potential of Warcrying 5-6 with this guy, and I feel with that, it's almost worth getting in there just one time with him, and giving a +6/+6 to your next unit or weapon is huge. If you have combat spells, this is a great target for them. Combat tricks, because of the fact that it's a must block. If you get in there, you attack with it, and it has Warcry 3, your opponent is very incentivized to try to double block it to take it out, because there's only so many of those triggers an opponent can fight through. So having a way to keep this thing alive and win combat, and maybe potentially get a second trigger or third trigger off of it, is just huge. And then obviously if you're ahead, this guy just steamrolls and keeps pumping the rest of your creature units, so you can keep attacking. It's so good, so good. And like I said, in a stalled board state, you get in one time with it. With a Warcry 7 or 8, obviously that's best case. You're just crushing it. So I gave Warband Skald a 4. Once again, you still want to be kind of cognizant of your curve. A 3/4 for 5 is not great, so I wouldn't jam like 5 or 6 of these in my deck, but I think 1 or 2 is very solid, especially if you have the combat tricks and things to keep it alive. And last for Justice, we have New Order Watchwing. This is a 4/4 Valkyrie, 6 power, double Justice. It has flying, and it has renowned. Play a relic weapon with attack and armor equal to the cost of that spell or weapon. I'm not sure about this card, and the reason being is 4/4 for 6 flying is fine. I think it's par for course. I would give it a 3 right off of that. I think it's an okay curve topper. The evasion definitely makes the 4/4 more bearable. Double Justice at 6 isn't an issue. What the value of it there now becomes the power of that renown. So if you play the 2/2 sword on it or the 2/3 mace on it, you're getting a relic weapon of 2/3 or 2/2. I mean, somewhat for free. So let's say you're doing the 2/3, right? So you're getting 4/6 worth of stats for, I think it's 4 to equip. So that's not horrible. I think the renown is more of a bonus. You're just kind of happy with whatever you get. Even with the 2/2, you can potentially, 2/2 weapon, you could potentially, wait, I'm sorry, it's the cost of that weapon. I apologize. So yeah, so if you saddle up, you're not getting a +4/+4 or 4/4 weapon, you're getting a 2/2 weapon. If you Finest Hour gets a 1/1 weapon, stuff like that. So here with this guy, then it's slightly those more expensive combat tricks or spells, kind of like Pistol Whip, would be a little bit better because now you're giving it a +2/+2 just for the turn, but still stunning a unit and getting a 4/4 relic. So that kind of ups it for me. That being said, I still don't think you're going to value it highly, though I could see this being potentially a really solid card. I guess I just have to see how the format plays out and how often you're taking these slower spells and how many weapons you're carrying in your decks. That being said, if you combo with Fire, Fire has a ton of ways of slapping a weapon on this guy. So you're getting 2 for 1 in your favor. So yeah, actually, I'm going to give it a 3 still. Oh man, but even in Shadow, you have plenty of weapons. So you're still kind of getting value, and it's already a flyer. Yeah, you know what? I was going to give it a 3, but I think I might actually bump it up to, I'll tell you what, I still reserve a little bit, so I'll give it a 3.5 on New Order Watchwing. Cool. Well, that's green. Green seems pretty exciting. Justice, plenty of 4s in there, at least in my opinion, solid 3s, and really not too many 1s. So I think Justice has some really solid uncommons. All right, next up on our factions, we have Primal Blue Faction. We're going to start off with a fast spell. We have Frost Wave. It is a 1 power, 1 primal fast spell. Stun an enemy unit. All right, clean, simple, works. It's a fast spell. I like it. It also has Amplify 3, so you can cast it for 1, 4, or 7. Stun an additional enemy unit. This card is just fine. It stalls your opponent's attack, and it can put you ahead on tempo if you're kind of, getting there early with flyers. You're on the play. You can cast it for just 1, which easily fits anywhere in your curve, but the potential of it stopping 2 units, maybe even 3, is really solid. That being said, it is still stun. So in a stalled board state, it doesn't do that much. I think in development, it's okay. It's great when you're ahead, obviously, and it's just okay at best when you're behind. So I gave Frost Wave a 3. Our next card is Pitfall Trap. This is a 1 power, 1 primal relic. It says once per turn, you may pay 1 to draw a card, then discard a card. So loot ability for my MTG people. Use only if you have played a unit this turn. And then it has summon, deal 1 damage to an enemy. So on the ground floor, you're paying 1 to do 1 damage and potentially activating relic synergies. Doesn't seem worth a card to me. Yeah, just 1 damage on its own. You get that for a snowball. That counts as a spell. You get most snowballs for free as an additional trigger on things. So I'm not excited about that. The looting ability is solid. I do like the looting ability. The issue I have is you can only do it when you play a unit. So it kind of mixes up your curve a little bit. to where like you're going to end up casting your 3 drops on 4 if you want to activate this and things like that. So yeah, I don't think it's great. Once again, looting is a great ability. It constantly upgrades your hand later, and then later in the game, you will have the extra power to do this. The ground floor of it, just dealing 1 is not very impressive. There is no other payoff than just the looting, so they're valuing that. It is only 1 power, so you can sneak this in anywhere in your curve. I'm not high on it, so I gave Pitfall Trap a 2. If you could loot just any turn, period, I think this would be significantly better, because then you could loot before you do any of your plays and stuff like that. But the fact that you have to play a unit first kind of hinders it a little bit. All right, next card is Parry. This is a fast spell, 2 power, 1 primal. Give one of your units plus 2 health this turn. It deals 2 damage to an additional unit. So it is on the ground floor. It's pseudo a +2/+2 because at the ground floor, like I said, you block with the unit, you make it bigger, and you deal 2 extra damage to that opponent or to that unit to kill it. Another thing you can do, it could save one of your units from combat, i.e. if like a 4/4 smashes into a 4/4, you can make your 4/4 a 4/6, and then use the 2 damage to kill a unit that's either in combat with something else or just not in combat at all, like a pesky flyer or something like that. So there is some flexibility and promise to parry. I think it's just fine. It does trigger Renown, so that is something else. But I don't think it's an amazing combat trick. So I'm going to give parry a 3. I could see this. I was surprised at the value of combat tricks overall in the last format, so they might still be of higher value here, and then parry will go up. But as of right now, I am just going to give it a 2. Or 3, I'm sorry, 3. I think it's a fine combat trick, but you're not thrilled about it. All right, next up, we have Wind Cloak. This is a 2 power, 1 primal relic, and pay 4 to give one of your units flying this turn. I think this card's good, and the reason being is it's, once again, because of the way Eternal works on timing, you can only give units flying on your turn, but it has a way of finishing the game. There's that Sky Crew Injustice, the 2/4, that for 8, you can give a unit +3/+3 in flying, and I've seen that win games. Granted, this does not give you +3/+3, but if you have like one good creature on the board, you're in a stalled board state, this can give it enough evasion to get through. So I do think Wind Cloak is fine. Once again, as I mentioned before, it does have Relic Matter synergies if it needed to. So one of note, it does absolutely nothing when the turn it comes into play. It is only 2, so you have a chance of playing it and activating at the same turn, so that is a thing. It doesn't help when you're behind because the unit loses flying immediately, so you can't block like a pesky flyer they have or something like that. So, I gave it a 3 initially, but I think actually I'm going to give it a 2 because I think it's not going to be as good on your curve as you think. Granted, like I said, once again, I will see this win games by giving 1 or 2 of your units flying, so I don't think it's horrible. But the fact that it doesn't affect the board when it comes into play and doesn't do anything when you're behind devalues it a little bit. So I gave Wind Cloak a 2. All right, our next uncommon is a Courier Albatross, which is a 2/2 bird for 3 power, 1 primal, so easily splashable. It has flying, and it says Amplify 3, +1/+1, and draw a card. So this card's great. For those of you who play MTG, not that I'm going to make too many more references to it, this is similar to Mole Drifter. So I like this card. I think 9 out of 10 times you're going to be playing it for 6. So you get a 3/3 flyer plus a card. I think that's huge. It's just great. A 3/3 flyer, even for 6 earlier, we saw one at uncommon, and I think that's unexciting. But the fact that this one gives you, at the very least, gives you your card back and your opponent has to deal with it is very impressive. And if you get it so late in the game where now you have 9 power open, you can play a 4/4 flyer and draw 2 cards, which, I mean, at that point, I feel like you're practically winning the game. Yeah, I think it's great. Very rarely, I mean, a 2/2 flyer for 3 is on par. That's just average. If you really need to fill out your curve and do it, then you will. But if not, like, I think you're going to be playing this a lot on 6 power and getting your card back, which I think is just great. So I gave Courier Albatross a 4. And I think it's okay to have a couple of these in your deck just because you could play it at different times. So yeah. Next up, we have Glacier Shaper. This is a 2/4 Shaman, 3 power, 1 primal. It says Renown, play a Glacial Monstrosity with health and power or attack equal to the cost of that spell or weapon and overwhelm. So a 2/3 or 2/4 for 3 is good. I think it blocks well. It could attacks okay, but the main thing is that you can block just about everything that part in the curve, and it'll stay alive for a while. You slap an extra spell on this or a weapon, you have a really solid creature. Once again, much like I saw earlier with the New Order Watchwing, the spells you're going to be playing on this, I don't feel are going to be that big to where you're going to be getting like a 6/6. Overwhelm unit. So you're kind of just getting pseudo 2-for-1. Use a combat trick on this to kill a bigger creature. Then you get another smaller creature. I think that's good. Not super excited. Once again, I very rarely do I see this being like a blowout kind of thing. But it is a decent upside. So I gave Glacier Shaper a 3. Like I said, once again, it's additional value, and you just kind of 2-for-1 your opponent enough times, you're going to win the game. So I think this kind of helps you get there, and the body is pretty solid. So I think it's a good pickup for your curve. Next up, we have Storm Spiral. This is a fast spell for 3 power, 1 primal, and deal 2 damage to each unit and player. So it is symmetrical. It hits all sides of the board, the field. This card is very situational based on your deck build and your opponents. It could win you the game on the spot, or it could simply be a 1-for-1. It's kind of up to you. I gave it a 2. Reason being is 2 damage just isn't 3. 3 covers a lot more units than 2 does. And it also, like I said, since it's symmetrical, it has the potential of hitting your creatures as well. Granted, if you draw it early enough, you can kind of play your cards around it. But it's there's 2 drops that won't die to this. So it's very easy to kind of wait and see if you can bait out a bunch of creatures and just not get the payoff. So I think you could probably squeeze in a 2-for-1 out of this, and I think that's fine, but it's also very situational. So I don't see taking an early pick on this card very valuable. I think you're happy if you pick one up, 8th, 9th, 10th, maybe even later than that, depending on how many 2 health units there are in the format. Storm Spiral gets a 2 for me. It could be really good, or it could be, almost nothing. That being said, you can also use it after combat, kind of get in there, do some damage. Your opponent thinks they made favorable blocks, and you finish wiping out their board with this. Though, obviously, you're probably taking out most of your creatures as well. So yeah, moving along, we have Lens of Clarity. This is a 4 power, 1 primal relic. Your spells deal 1 damage. Yeah, so you would want somewhere like 6 to 7 spells that care about damage for it to be worth a card. You know what I mean? Because you need to draw them, and like just one extra, paying a whole card and 4 power to potentially, like if you only up 1 damage on 1 spell, you're paying 4 power for 1 damage. That's just not worth it. So yeah, I wouldn't be happy till I casted maybe 3 spells where this made a difference. So I am not very high on it. So Lens of Clarity gets a 1 for me. I just feel like you have to kind of steer your deck too much in one direction to make it happen. Primal does have a bunch of deal damage spells. I think at least 4 off the top of my head, but once again, you have to take them, and they're removal for this color, so other people on the table will be trying to take it from you as well. So I'm low on Lens of Clarity and gave it a 1. Hey, sometimes it might work its way up to a 2, but yeah, not very excited about this card at all. Next up, we have Reclusive Scholar. This is a 0/6 Explorer, 4 power, 1 primal, and it has Renown, play a Cobalt Ring. So Cobalt Ring is the once per turn, you may pay 3 power to draw a card, then discard a card. So this is just straight up looting. Regardless, you don't have any prerequisites other than paying the 3. So 3 is not 1. That is slightly expensive, but later in the game when you're either drawing sigils that you don't need or drawing your lower curve, your 2 drops and stuff that just aren't relevant anymore, you can use that to ship them away and potentially dig you a little bit deeper in your deck. A 0/6 is not exciting body, and I'll tell you why. 6 will block a lot of things, 6 health, but the fact that it is 0 attack means that it's only going to kind of pseudo slow down one of your opponent's attackers. It's not going to kill it, so you could just keep attacking into it and kind of getting damage around it. And it's a little high on curve. I guess you're paying the extra power to cast it because it has the Renown trigger. So, and then once again, you have to trigger Renown on this. So what, are you happy spending a combat trick on this guy? I mean, the loot potentially is worth half a card to a lot of people, so you will, in 2 or 3 activations, get that combat trick or that weapon back. You slap an okay weapon on this guy. Let's say you're comboed off with fire, so you slap the 2/1 axe on him. So he's a 2/7. That's still not very exciting. So, yeah, I'm going to value the loot Cobalt Ring on it a little bit higher. So I'm going to give Reclusive Scholar a 3. Once again, I don't think it's spectacular. I don't think this is a great body because it's okay. But just the fact that if you're kind of that deck that wants to go the long game, this will help facilitate that and smooth out your draws later. Next up, we have a Sudden Scheme. I'm pretty sure that's Scheme. Schism? Sudden Schism? I should have looked it up, actually. Oh, well. C'est la vie. I'll look it up after the show. And here we have a fast spell for 4 power, primal, so 2 primal. Play a copy of one of your units. Yeah, this card's fine. I think the ceiling of this card is that it copies your best unit in your deck, which is some bomb rare, and then makes it very difficult for your opponent to deal with. It is a fast speed, so you can potentially use it as a combat trick and double a unit that might be really big on your board and take out 2 of your opponent's units when they thought they were just going to use 1 or they had the combat trick for 1. That being said, it does have the setup cost of having to have units that are worth copying in your deck. So, there's a chance that it could sit in your hand with nothing but your 2 and 3 drops in play, or you have nothing to copy. Yeah, I gave Sudden Scheme a 2. You have to have favorable units for it to copy, which could potentially be a big deal or a bit of a setup cost. So, yeah, a 2. I think it's going to have some really great times where you'll be able to have, oh man, you should hear this story type effects. But I think overall it's just going to be a very medium spell. So I'm going to put a 2 on it. At best, I think it would get up to a 3. But yeah, I think 2 is a good spot for Sudden Schism. All right, next up we have a dinosaur, Cliff Diver Mantisaur. Once again, is a 4/3 dinosaur for 5, double primal. Flying, Aegis, and Pledge. I like this card. I think it's great. A 4/3 flyer for 5 is pretty solid. We just talked about 4/4 for 6 is okay, so 4/3 for 5 with evasion is great. I absolutely love the fact that it has Aegis, which means the 4/3 flyer is a body your opponent wants to deal with somehow, and the fact that it has Aegis means they have to deal with it twice. So I really, really like Mantisaur. I think it's almost always going to be a 2-for-1. It has a slight insurance policy of Pledge, so if you happen to have it in your opening hand and your hand is kind of expensive, you could play that instead as your Sigil. So yeah, I like it. It's not really exciting. It doesn't have any amazing synergies or anything like that. Dinosaurs aren't really that big of a thing. But once again, I think the body overall with Aegis is great. You can also, it makes it a great target for weapons and stuff like that because your opponent has to have 2 different ways to interact with it to kind of get you. So yeah, good job, Cliff Diver. Next up, we have Elvish Swindler. This is a 2/3 elf rogue for 5 power, 2 primal. And summon, play a relic of your choice with cost 2 or less from your deck. Yeah, I just gave this a 1. I don't think there's any relics at the rare or uncommon or common level that are 2 or less that really make a huge impact on the board that would be worth essentially 3. You're getting like the tutor effect, which there is some value, but you're also at the baseline getting a 2/3 for 5, which is just not great. So yeah, Elvish Swindler gets a 1 from me. It is elf. You'll see some elf synergies in this set, and there might be a rare relic or a legendary relic that costs 2 or less that is just great and huge impact, and then this guy goes up in value, so you technically have 2 of them. But yeah, I'm not thrilled about it. Moving right along, we have Starved Vorlunk. This is a 6/6 dinosaur. 7 power, double primal. So this is going to be one of our finishers in the primal decks. 6/6 for 7 on the ground is meh, not very excited. I think it's fine. It'll be a curve topper, but it has overwhelm, so that does increase its value a little bit, because the last thing you want is your 6/6 or something larger to get blocked by a 1/1 and nothing happen. But then it also has Amplify 2. Give it a +3/+3 permanently. So if you play this on 9, it becomes a 9/9. And now, granted, 9 is a lot. You can probably count on one hand how many times you've been able to last that long. Maybe not. Maybe this is a slower format. You can go a little bit longer. So a 9/9 with overwhelm is great. Like, now you're talking about a creature that will get in there, especially you just need one combat trick to essentially keep this guy alive and just take over the game when your opponent tries to double or triple block it to take it down. 6/6 for 7 is just okay. It's fine. It's a fine topper. I believe they have a 5/6 for 6, right? Is the other dinosaur that Primal has. So it's not horrible. But, I mean, if you get up to 9, this thing's a 9/9 overwhelm, that's great. 11, I think you're really hard-pressed. But there, you're just crushing it. Now you have a 12/12, and you're just doing absolutely amazing. That guy's huge, and he'll win the game pretty quickly. So, yeah, I gave Starved Vorlunk a 3 because of that potential. So, yeah, that is Primal. I think Primal is kind of on all sides of the spectrum. A couple of 4s, a couple of 1s. But overall, not too bad, not too bad. All right, almost done here. We are going into Shadow Faction. First up, we have Dire Wood Slasher. This is a 1/1 elf warrior for 1. 1 shadow, and it has Berserk. And then it has Empower +1/+1 this turn. So, yeah, base time, I think it's just not that impressive. But 1/1 for 1, even with Berserk. It does have some bonuses where if you can pump it somehow, you'll get in way extra damage, so, and stuff like that. There is the +2/+1 quick draw weapon. You put on this, it's a 3/2. You can get in there for 6, potentially 8 if you trigger Empower. So I think it has some potential. There is another uncommon we're going to see in a little bit that can make the elf synergies matter. So I think this card's okay. Obviously, it's uncommon for a reason, but baseline early, I'm not too high on it because you're still just getting a 1/1, potentially a 2/2 most of the time for 1. So similar to like the one we saw in red, we had a slight downside. I'm going to give Direwood Slasher a 2. Almost a 1, but the Berserk will come into play and the elf synergies could come into play as well. Moving on, we have Lethrai Lobotomy. This is a 1 power, 1 shadow spell. It says sacrifice a relic to kill an enemy unit. So here I see us kind of capitalizing on the relics that do something on summon and then they kind of just sit there. Or a relic that has top end, you use it and then you use this. We see this, a similar effect with like the Grenadins. But you typically get more than 1 card worth of value off of those Grenadins. And then that way you're only sacrificing, a card and a half to essentially take out a better 1 card from your opponent. So I feel like this could go either way. It just kind of depends on how many relics we have that do something, and then that's it. We'll see. I haven't seen too much of that yet, and pretty much I don't see the point of playing a relic that's kind of not really impactful just to activate this. So even though it is removal, pseudo unconditional has a bit of a setup cost. So I'm giving Lethrai Lobotomy a 2, which is low for me, but I just don't see how many times you're going to want to play a relic and then want to actively get rid of it. So yeah. Moving on, we have Rat Cage. This is a 1 shadow, 1 power relic. When you play a relic, including Rat Cage, play a 1/1 rat that can't block. So, yeah, all right. So, depends how viable the go wide strategy is in this set. And there is that common elf that pumps the team by Empower. So it is at common, so you'll be able to get 1 or 2 for your deck fairly consistently and fairly easy if you want to. So it's another like how valuable is having a relic and how many relics are you going to play? Because 1/1 for 1 that can't block, that's already a downside to me. So now you're talking about, let's say if we play 2 more relics, we get a total of 3/3 worth of stats that can only attack. I don't know. I don't know where this is going to fit. Like, obviously, they put it in there for a reason. And once again, both Shadow and Fire have ways of pumping up the attack of your units. So you kind of want to get in there, and you might be able to trade those rats up on creatures. That being said, so because of all that, and we really not kind of having a good feel for this card or the format, I'm going to give Rat Cage a 3, just because it's the very middle of the rung. Worst case scenario, you're getting 2 1/1 rats for 1, because obviously you're going to want to cast whatever other relic it is. Like, for example, the +1 attack to all your units. So there's a little bit of synergy there. So yeah, Rat Cage gets a 3. Moving along, we have another relic. This is Secret Passage. So it kind of looks like Shadow is one of the Relic Matters colors. It is a 1 power, 1 shadow relic, so another cheap relic. And once per turn, you may pay 2 power to give one of your units unblockable this turn. Okay, so that's a relevant ability, very relevant. Sacrifice it at the end of the turn. Ouch. Okay, so whatever you're giving, unblockable to, and that's it. No pump, no nothing, just unblockable. Dies at the end of turn. So yeah, you're very one-shot type thing. So you want stuff that may trigger a type of infiltrate, or you just get those last bits of damage in. So I'm not too thrilled about it. It is repeatable, but I mean, how many times are you gonna want to kill your own creature to get a little bit of damage in? It does work with that Direwood Slasher. You give it a pump spell, make it a huge creature, get in there for a ton, and then it dies. So potentially it would be the attack that kills your opponent. It also has a summon ability. Give one of your units unblockable this turn. So at the very least, ground floor, you play it and you make one of your units unblockable for 1. And you have the relic synergies, which you could sacrifice to Lethrai Lobotomy. So there's a little bit of work there, a little bit. I could see that now where it kind of gains a little bit of value with the synergy and stuff like that. But I'm still not too thrilled about the fact that like its continued ability, you have to sacrifice the creature. So you might potentially only activate this once or twice to kind of get in those last points of damage based on your opponent being low on life. So yeah, I'm not high on it. I'm going to give Secret Passage a 2. And I could be wrong. I could see some finisher potential here, but still I'm going to give it a 2. Next up, we have another relic. This is Blood Quill. It is a 2 power, 1 shadow relic. Once per turn, you may pay 2, I'm seeing a theme here, and discard the bottom card of your deck to give one of your units lifesteal this turn. So this is, I think, significantly better because of the fact that lifesteal can change racing math. It can kind of bring you back from a losing position if you have a big enough creature. If you have a guy that's unblockable, like a 5/1 unblockable, then you're doing a 10-point life swing. So I think that has some upside. That being said, you can do it on defense. It's only this turn, so as soon as you pass the turn, the unit loses lifesteal. It has a summon ability. Summon, discard the bottom 2 cards of your deck. So I guess this kind of also fuels gray or void synergies. I didn't really see too much of this looking at it. I could be wrong. Obviously, you are going to get 2 packs of most of the cards in Eternal's history, so you do have the chance of having some void shenanigans going on. That's not completely off the table, so it's probably why that's there as well. That being said, still not too thrilled about this. Taking cards off the bottom of your deck, I don't think influences too much. That being said, it is somewhat milling you, so you do have the potential of running out of cards. So I gave Blood Quill a 2. All right, next up we have a unit. We have a Heirloom Seeker. This is a 1/3 elf rogue, so another elf. 2 power, 1 shadow. It has Pledge, which, I mean, I guess it's a thing, but I don't really see you pledging away too many 2-drops because they're blowing your curve. But hey, it could be a thing if you end up having like too many 2-drops and just 1 power. Maybe you keep this. But anywho. Next, it gets a +1 attack and unblockable while you have a relic. So I actually do like this guy. He's a solid blocker. 1/3 for 2 is fine. It'll block most of the early aggression. At worst, they have to spend a combat trick on it, which I think it's okay. I enjoy when the opponent spends a combat trick on my 2-drop versus my 5-drop. And later on in the game, you play a relic, it's going to get in there for at least 2 a turn if you have a stable board state, which is not, irrelevant, especially if you can slap a some kind of pump spell or weapon on it to, and then obviously Shadow has ways of pumping attack via other creatures. So this guy can get in there. Unblockable is definitely something not to take lightly. So I do like this guy. That being said, he still is just 1/3 on the base. So I gave Heirloom Seeker a 3. Solid curve filler early. Next up, we have Obliviobot. Yeah, there you go. Obliviobot. I guess Oblivious and Robot. So yeah, it is a 5/1 Grenadin for 2 power, 1 shadow. It has Empower, Sacrifice Obliviobot. So you get a 5/1 for 2. That's almost always going to trade up. If you can attack with it, have a couple combat tricks to keep it alive, it can definitely get in and do some work. That being said, 1 health means it trades with everything. And it's kind of strange. As soon as you play your next power, it dies. So, I guess it could trigger, not Spark, Tribute. It can trigger Tribute. You're less incentivized to play this on turn 2 or on curve because you don't want to get stuck on 2 power. This is a very interesting card. Seems very weird to me. I personally am not quite sure. I guess you can always play it later in the game to just kind of keep it up on defense. When you're at 7 or 8 power, you don't need to play anymore. I'm not really sure. This might be more of a constructed design card. So, yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, like I said, it fills a role. It could block a lot of things. So I gave Obliviobot a 2 just because I'm not sure. Like, I feel like it's going to come in handy at some point, so I'm hard-pressed to give it just straight up 1. Next, we have Warlock's Brew. This is a 2 power, 1 shadow fast spell. Give an enemy unit and each other enemy unit with the same name -2/-2 this turn. I like this card. It's cheap removal. Yeah, it doesn't get rid of a lot of big creatures or anything like that, but it's only 2 power. You're only paying 2 to play it. It's a fast spell, so you can win combat with it. You can negate a pump spell. It's versatile in the fact that it's cheap, and it has a random upside of, like, if it ends up being a common that your opponent has 1 or 2 of in play, or I'm sorry, 2 or 3 of in play, you get essentially 2 for 1 them or 3 for 1 them. So I like Warlock's Brew a lot. I'm going to give it a 4. I think it's very efficient removal for what it's supposed to be, and stops opponents' early aggression. And it's good in the late game because, like I said, you can play it and it does some work. Next up, we have Mug. This is a 3 power, 1 shadow spell. Enemy player discards a non-power card of your choice from their hand. So the fact that you get to choose the card is pretty big. And that's why it costs 3 instead of 1, right? Because most of the time we'll see this for 1, but it kind of gives you a downside or a limitation on what you can discard, or your opponent just picks their own hand. But there's a window where this would be most effective. So it's kind of medium. The reason being is you can play it late game and hope that your opponent has like just their 1 or 2 bombs in their hand, or you can play it and it turns out they have like 1 cheap combat trick and then like 2 sigils. If you play it too early, let's say you curve out, you play it on 3 hoping to snag whatever their solid 4 or 5 drop is. They may have not drawn their bomb yet, so you kind of have to pick a mediocre card. So I think this card is fine. It could be insurance when you're about to drop your bomb. You play it, make sure they don't have a removal spell or kill spell for it, and then the closest clear, pseudo clear, because they could draw it and play your bomb. So it has some versatility in it. I think Mug is fine. Once again, it has too many chances to whiff, and it has too many chances to take like a great card. If they have their 1 bomb in their hand, you get rid of it, boom, it's done, easy and clean. So I gave Mug a 3. I think it's a solid pickup. It doesn't go either way. It's not too low, it's not too high in value. Next up, we have Fangs in the Dark. This is a fast spell for 4 power, 2 shadow. Your attacking units get deadly this turn. So I was a little high on this card initially until I reread it and realized that it said attacking units. So, I mean, you pretty much, it can blow out your opponent, no doubt. You can attack with a bunch of cheap creatures like we saw, like rats that can't block, the 1/1 rats, and these little cheap elves. And then when your opponent makes quote-unquote favorable blocks, you cast this, and now all your guys have deadly, and you wipe your opponent's board. That being said, like, they're less incentivized to block 1/1s and things like that. Sometimes they might know, they're like, this seems fishy. I've got a bunch of 3/3s and 5/5s. This is weird, so I just won't block. It just, there is blowout potential. Like, I think the ceiling is high, especially if you end up being one of those decks that has a lot of like low power, low attack, high toughness creatures or units. Then this is good as well. But once again, you can only do this in combat when you're attacking. So you're really like, are you happy with this being a 1-for-1? You know what, a 2-for-2? So yeah, I don't think it's that great. I gave Fangs in the Dark a 2. Next up, we have Umbral Edge. This is a +2/+2 relic weapon, 4 power, 2 shadow, and has empower +1/+1. So Umbral Edge, I think this has potential for this to be consistently or being a 2-for-1, right? And the reason being is that you play it and then you play a sigil right away. It becomes a 3/3 weapon. You can take out a small creature and the next turn take out another small creature or unit. I think is the most common gameplay you're going to see for this. There is the thing where you can get it down early, and if your opponent is not aggressive enough and there's a stalled board state or a million reasons where they potentially, you don't need to use it right away and they have no way of taking its durability away, it can just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and being a 5/5, a 6/6, and just doing some major work. And you just kind of kill whatever utility units you need to as it goes up there. So baseline, getting 2/2 for 4, not very exciting. You're kind of downgrading even when you get to kill a unit, but it will sometimes act as that. So I think Umbral Edge is a 4. I could be wrong. I could see this being a little more medium, but I think that it's going to be a 2-for-1 more often than not. So that's why I went ahead and gave it a 4, because a 2-for-1 remove a spell is always great. Next up, we have Eye for an Eye. This is a 5 power, 2 shadow spell. It is kill an exhausted enemy unit, then draw a unit from your void with a higher cost. So this is execute, except it's 1 more, and instead of doing 2 damage to the opponent, you get to potentially draw a unit from your void. Now, of note, it is higher cost than the creature you killed. So it's not like you kill their bomb and you get to bring back just about any creature you want. It's more about you kill their medium creature and then you get your big guy back, or you kill a smaller unit and get your medium card back. So it's a little bit hokey on how you play like that. So I think you have to value a little less the get a card back, even though that would be an automatic 2-for-1, and a little highly more on being able to kill just about anything. That being said, the unit does have to be exhausted. So it either has to block one of your smaller units, which could be a thing, or they have to get in and you have to chump block, or they have to hit you, take a little bit of damage. So I think the fact that it kills anything and has the potential to draw you a solid card of your choosing puts it as a really good removal. I don't think it's efficient because, like I said, once again, they have to hit you or at least attack with it, or you have to sack a unit into it. And obviously, unless you're teamed up with Primal and you can stun it, and it is 5, but hey, you can get a card back. So I gave Eye for an Eye 4. All right, almost done here. We're working up to our last card in Shadow, and this is Sadistic Glee. This is a 5/5 Nightmare, 6 power, 1 shadow. So it's okay. It's a curve topper, but I'm not thrilled. It has a summon ability. The enemy player discards the top 2 cards from their deck for each of your units. So here's the thing. I graded it simply on it being a 5/5 for 6, which, like I said, I think it's a fine curve topper. It's not great. You're not kind of like, yeah, we got there, boys, but it is a solid body. It being vanilla is not exciting either, so I gave it a 3. But there are going to be some times, like most of the time, the summon ability is going to be irrelevant. You're going to mill, let's say, 8 cards most of the time, and that's, okay, that's fine. In a stalled board state, it could potentially. I think you're really going to make your money when you get to do mill 10, 12, 14 cards off your opponent, because what that's doing is getting them it's taking a good chunk of their deck out. Over half of their deck is going straight into their void. So those are cards they can't draw to help the situation. And it potentially opens up the door for you to mill them out, i.e. they run out of cards to draw and lose the game on the spot. So there is some upside to this card, and I think that's why it's uncommon. But if you're going to be playing this card on curve, I think most of the time you're just going to be milling your opponent for 6, and it's not going to do that much as far as the summon ability goes. So yeah, Sadistic Glee gets a 3 for me. I will see it win some games. I may even lose to it, but at the same time, I think those are going to be few and far between, so it's not overtly high pick. So yeah, That was Shadow. Not bad. Some interesting stuff. Definitely kind of pushing the relic theme here. We'll have to see how valuable those rats are. I feel like they've done some development, so it's not going to be like a negligible thing, but I could be wrong. All right, so we're almost done. We're going to go into our multi-faction cards. These cards have more than one influence, and because of that, they should kind of show you what those color pairs are trying to do and be motivated, if they're good enough, to kind of lean you towards those colors. So we're going to start off with Stone Shell Walker. This is a 5/5 Sentinel for 5, 1 fire, 1 time. It has Overwhelm, so 5/5 for 5 is great, and Overwhelm is just added bonus. That's gravy. I think it's a solid card, very solid pick, and it has Entomb. You get 5 power this turn. So, like I stated earlier when we were in fire, getting energy or power at a certain part, like sometimes can really get you there, but it's so situational. You have to have the payoff cards in your hand. I think most of the time this is just going to give you the ability to cast 2 cards in 1 turn, which is not irrelevant. That is something. The fact that it's overwhelmed means combat tricks are better. It's great. It's hard for your opponent to chump block it, and it is solid rate vanilla on the curve. So I think this card is great. I think it's a lot stronger than just a blank 5/5, and the potential to use a combat trick on this, and if it does die or whatever, or if your opponent does do it, you can still cast 2 spells, is absolutely great. So I gave Stone Shell Walker a 4. It might be a little high for just a plain creature that doesn't really kill anything, but I think you're just getting really good value on this card all the way around, and you're happy whenever you play it. Yeah, cool. So moving on, we have Deadeye. This is a 5/5 Gunslinger. 6 power, 1 fire, 1 justice. It has Pledge, so you can play it on turn 1 either as a fire or a Justice Sigil. And it has Renowned. If the spell or weapon costs 4 or more, play a +1/+1 weapon on each of your units. Otherwise, just play 1 on Deadeye. So 5/5 for 6 with not Overwhelm is obviously looks significantly worse, as we just saw our last Stone Shell Walker. So I'm not excited about that. The Pledge is okay, it being a 6-drop, and it is color fixing. The fact that it gives you Pledge on 2 colors is a thing, so I do like that. The Renown, I'm not thrilled about it. How many spells or weapons are you going to have of +4 or more, and are you going to hold out for this? Now, granted, it will pump your whole team, but once again, how many other units are you going to have? There's too much flexibility on this card being, okay. Like, it gives you a pseudo anthem effect, which we see in rare cards already. Granted, those are rares, it's uncommon. And you have a couple of renowned trigger activations, but most of them are going to be the cheaper ones because you don't want to spend a whole turn just giving renown and potentially being blown up on a 2-for-1. This does create some kind of protection against that because of the fact it gives multiple units +1/+1, so you could get 3 +3/+3 worth of stats essentially for free. But yeah, I think it's just fine. So I gave Deadeye a 3. Next up, we have this card I really, really like. Iceberg Shiny Finder. It's a 3/3 Yeti for 3 power, 1 fire, 1 primal. It has Pledge, which once again, it is fixing. But, I mean, I don't know. I'm hard-pressed. A 3-drop is a little more likely to be pledged if I need to. That Justice 3/3 that has Pledge I use quite a bit. But that's also common versus this being an uncommon. And this card's ability is really great. So it has Amplify 2. So you can cast it for 5. You can cast it for 7, 9, and 11. Deal 1 damage to an enemy. Any enemy. This card is great all the way up the curve. Like, it can clear boards if your opponent is going wide with a bunch of rats and things like that. It can finish units after combat. So you attack in there. Some blocks are, like whatever low attack, high toughness creatures, and comes in there and finishes like 2 of them off and stuff like that. And it destroys relic weapons. Your opponent has a weapon at 2 power or 2 armor. You do put this into play, deal 2 damage to it, kill it. Like, it's just so versatile. And the baseline is a 3/3 body for 3, which is just fine if you need to. But you can even play it at 5 and do 1 extra damage. Like, I think this is great. Like, the elf, the 2/1 for 3 that puts a -1/-1 counter on things does some work. This thing does that plus more. So I like its versatility a lot. I think Iceberg Shiny Finder is great. I give it a 4. I would highly incentivize to pick this and then kind of lean into those colors. Or, I mean, it's only one of each influence, so you could potentially splash it. Moving along, we have Clan Huntcaller. This is a 4/3 for 4 warrior, 1 fire, 1 shadow, and it has Warcry. So 4/3 for 4 is just fine. It's on curve. Warcry is a nice bonus. I like that. So it's good baseline. And then we have Summon. Your other units get Warcry this turn. So I think this card has the payoff potential for, we just saw red and fire and shadow are the go wide colors. Potentially. We saw the rats and the elf synergies and stuff in shadow. Obviously, Grenadins in fire. So I see the potential of this coming down on curve. You attack with 2 rats. Your 1/1 rats. Even if your opponent chump blocks it, like you just gave +2/+2 to something else, and then this thing has Warcry. If you have a way to make your guys' opponents or your creatures unblockable that turn or give them deadly. This has some major upside. So, man, I think you might actually even want to cast this later than on curve, just so you have more units for it to get Warcry to. But at the same time, on curve, I think it's fine. I'm kind of on the fence. I was going to give it a 3, but reading it, seeing those rat synergies and go wide with the relics and then being unblockable, I think I'm going to go ahead and give Clan Huntcaller 3.5 because I can see it going either way into a 4 or a 3. I'm going to try not to give too many half ratings on this just because I feel like it opens the potential for me to kind of be back and forth on things. But I really do feel like this is really in between, and I can see it going either way depending on how wide your deck goes. So, yeah, I like Huntcaller, Clan Huntcaller. Moving on, we have Penitent Bull. This is a 3/2 Cleric Minotaur. 4 power, 1 time, 1 justice. So underpowered on the curve here. 3/2, we typically want to see that at 3. Or if we see it at 4, we want some upside. So let's see what the text box says. Pay 5 and sacrifice Penitent Bull to play 3 random sigils from your deck depleted. So it's a subpar body like I mentioned, but it has the potential of ramping you because it does play the sigils. Even if they're random, it plays them depleted. So you play this on 4, on 5 you sack it. So you're going to have 8, potentially 9 power on turn 6. That's not relevant. I mean, not irrelevant. It's hard to say on whether it's going to fix your power or not because it does, or your influence, because it is 3 random. So even if your 2 color has the potential of getting 3 of the color you don't want, even though I highly doubt that will happen. If you're in 3 color, slim chances that it's going to get your 3rd color if you need it. But if you have, so it's hard to say. It will trigger the heck out of Empower. So if you have some Empower units and then hit this, it's going to trigger them 3, potentially 4 times if you have a sigil that turn to play. So there is some upside here. I'm not quite sure if it's there yet or not. So I'm going to give Penitent Bull a 3. I would have to play it out and see how valuable Empower is to the format. Moving on to our next one, we have Tunneling Gargantua. This is a 5/5 worm. 8 power, 1 time, 1 primal. So highly overcosted here. Let's find out why. It has killer. Okay, and it has pledge. So I like pledge on expensive units. So if it's in your opening hand, you have no problem going ahead and using this as a sigil. It is color fixing or influence fixing. And it has another ability. It says plus attack plus health equal to the cost of your highest cost relic. So let's say we have average relic of 3. Right? We play this, now you're getting an 8/8 for 8. That's good. That's actually a good rate because of the fact that it has killer. I value killer quite highly because it's a removal spell. The bigger the creature, the more it'll be able to kill. So if you play it, you have many of those 1 power relics. Now you're talking about a 6/6 for 8 with killer. That's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. And then obviously you have one of those 5 or 6 cost relics like the weapons, the mace, the 6/6 mace, it's 8. Now this thing is a 13. So of note, it doesn't have overwhelm, so they can chump block this. So it'll kill something and then they have the potential to chump block it. So it's still 2 for 1. It's still going to come down and kill something. It has pledge for insurance. I like it. So I'm giving Tunneling Gargantua a 4. Yeah, it's going to be a 2 for 1 most of the time. I think you're happy with that. And if it sticks around, then you'll be able to swing with it. Next up, one thing to note, it has to be in play already. Oh no, actually I'm not quite sure. Actually, I think this might move with your relic. So I think as you play relics, it might kind of modify to whichever one's the highest. Initially I thought, but I guess it would have said summon if it only triggered once it came into play. So yeah, this card's pretty solid. I like it. You could play it. It might be a 7/7, and then when you get your bigger relic, it gets bigger. I like that. Actually, this card's really good. Yeah, definitely a solid 4. It might even potentially creep you up to, and no, I think 8 power makes it not want to be a 5 and a windmill slam. I could be wrong though. I could see this being a really good card. All right, moving on. Next card, Sadistic Ritualist. This is a 1/4 cultist, 3 power, 1 time, 1 shadow. It has pledge. So once again, fixing 3 power isn't bad with pledge. Smooths out your draws. Or your curve, I apologize. So we have pay 2, exhaust Sadistic Ritualist, and sacrifice another unit to draw a card. Okay, so this is really taking advantage of that sack outlet, which, so I keep going back to those rats because I just feel like if you're not swinging with them, you might as well get rid of them and get something better. So there you have the potential of kind of starting to get a draw engine going and gaining more cards out of the value, especially for that relic. You're getting a pseudo free 1/1 rat. You can sack it later on and draw a card. So that's a thing. Of note, it is the same kind of cost as a treasure. So a card and 2 power to essentially draw a card. So I think it's fine. The body is not exciting, even though it can block. Fort Toughness is a thing. It'll block quite a bit. But you really want to have units that you're okay getting rid of or have entomb effects and things like that for this to kind of capitalize on it. And then you're kind of getting a 2-for-1. You're getting 2 cards out of 1. So that's when it starts to have value. So until you make that happen in a big kind of way, I give Sadistic Ritualist a 3. All right, next up, this guy, Gate Guardian. It is a 5/5 bear, 6 power, 1 justice, 1 primal, and it has renown flying. So a 5/5 flyer for 6 is a huge upside. I think in Huru you will have plenty of ways to trigger renown on it, right? Because you have, like, for example, just the 1/2 dagger in primal, and then we just saw Justice the Fur Hat, and you have the 2/2 sword. You have plenty of units that kind of make an additional. So I think the chances of Gate Guardian being a flying 5/5 is very high, and anything you put on it, you put endurance on it, make it a 6/6 flyer, all that stuff really kind of sends it over the top. That being said, if you don't have a way to do it, it is just a 5/5 vanilla for 6, which is slightly unexciting, but you can start swinging with it, or you can potentially block it or cast a pump spawn at fast speed to make it flying, to block a flyer and ambush it. I think this thing has a good amount of upside, and it is a creature that you want to spend your combat tricks on and target. So that adds value to it. So I gave it a 4. I think it's a solid curve topper, and it's the card that you want to be saving and targeting with other spells. So, and you're going to get solid upside that sticks around. Like, once you do it one time, I'll have flying forever. So yeah, I like Gate Guardian. I gave it a 5. That being said, I probably won't be windmill slamming it my first 3 picks, as weird as it sounds, because, I mean, 6s are replaceable. I would like to see this more like 4, 5, and 6 pick. All right, next up we have Resilient Wagoneer. This is a 1/1 gunslinger for 3 power, 1 primal, 1 justice, 1 shadow. It has pledge, so same as before. Influence fixing fixes out your opening hand. And power +1/+1 this turn for each of your units. So this card's going to be just good in a stalled board state. Like, what are we talking about? Let's say it curves out. On turn 4, you play a unit. We'll see. It's going to... So on turn 4, it's going to be a 3/3 because it counts itself. Turn 4, you play a unit. Then on 5, you play a 4. Yeah, I feel like this thing's going to be always under par. And then at parity, or a stalled board state, your opponent's just going to have enough things to kind of block it. So on the ground floor and on defense, it's a 1/1. Yeah, no, I'm off of it. Resilient Wagoneer is going to get a 2. Um, yeah, I almost want to give it a 1, honestly. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 1. It just, like, I guess if you're ahead, it's going to do really great things and kind of be an issue for your opponent, especially if you're the go wide. But other than that, I just feel like it being a 1-1 on defense, just, man, so you're always going to want to turn sideways with it. But what about when you don't, you miss like a play or something like that? So yeah, I'm going to give Resilient Wagoneer a 1. I get it. I could eat my words and it might be better than it looks, but I think right off the cuff, I'm not very impressed with this card. Next up, we have Lethrai Hideaway. This is a relic. 2 power, 1 primal, 1 shadow. And once per turn, you may pay 4 to give one of your elves +2 attack. It also has a summon ability. Play a 2/1 dark elf. So it immediately gives itself a target for its ability. So you can play this, if you play it late game, you can play this and activate it. A couple of things to note: the +2/+0 is permanent, so it could just continuously make a creature larger and larger. Also, you can activate it more than one time. Or no, never mind. It says 1 per turn. I apologize. So you can essentially make the 2/1 a 4/1 and then a 6/1 and so on and so forth. This is great if you can make your elves unblockable in some form or fashion. It really helps your creatures trade up. I would want somewhere between 6 to 9 elves in your deck before I would feel really good about adding this. If you only have like 3 elves, chances are you're only going to activate it on 1 elf, and then I think it's kind of under par. If you want to just value the pseudo relic synergy, yeah, that works as well with the removal spell, the lobotomy. You play a 2/1/2/2 or a 2 power 2/1, and then you could sack the hideaway to kill a creature. I think that's fine as well. It's a little bit flexible, but yeah, if you have enough elves in your deck, you have that critical mass of elves, I think hideaway is a 4 because you're just able to upgrade all your elves to the point where they either trade effectively in combat, both on defense and offense. So yeah, I like it. Once again, I gave it most of its value with elf synergies. If you have less elves in your deck, then I wouldn't value it as much, but it's still something. You're still getting something out of it, which I think is good. I have a card like this. All right, that covers the last of our 2 faction cards. The last thing we're going to have in our multi-faction cards are our 3 faction displays. Display of instinct, honor, ambition, vision, and knowledge. I'll go over them individually. I think these are really solid cards across the board. I gave 1 a 3, but the rest are 4s. And I even gave a 5. I'll go over it real quick. They really let you know. I think in most cases in this format, unless your fixing is just amazing, you're going to be playing primarily 2 colors and then splashing the 3rd. But these cards, I feel, really incentivize you to kind of find that faction, that wedge, and stick to it because these cards are versatile and great as a whole. All right, so let's go over them, starting off with Display of Instinct. This is a fast spell, 3 power, 1 fire, 1 time, 1 primal, and it is first ability, deal 4 damage to an enemy, period. Point blank, doesn't need to be attacking, defending, nothing. Just 4 damage, clean cut, precise. I like that. Next up, we have put one of your units into your hand and it gain its health. Okay, so it's life gain. So, not the most exciting thing spending a card on, but sometimes it does come in handy in a race situation. That being said, it also, more importantly, saves a unit. If you have your bomb on the field and your opponent finds a cut ties or something to deal with it, or they use 2 combat tricks on it and you weren't expecting it, you can use Display of Instinct to save it and gain some life in the exchange. So that's great. And lastly, you have negate an enemy spell, which goes back to the thing we just said. If there's some kind of card that's going to potentially throw your opponent way ahead or take out your bomb or just something you don't want to see them have, you can negate this just using Displays of Instinct. So this is great versatility. It saves one of your creatures, gives you some life in a race. It negates an enemy kill spell or just a combo, and then it just straight up kills a creature. I think this card is great. Displays of Instinct is a fast spell, solid removal. It trades up most of the time. I think the one thing that's stopping me from giving it a 5 is to see how relevant 4 damage is to most units in this format. So yeah, but either way, Display of Instinct is a 4. I think it is a solid pickup and definitely something that incentivizes you to go 3 colors. Moving on, we have Display of Honor. Okay, this is another fast spell. These are all fast spells, by the way. They're all 3 power. It just requires certain influences. So Honor is Fire, Justice, Primal. Mode 1, give one of your units +4/+4 and lifesteal this turn. That's great. It's going to, 9 out of 10 times, it's going to kill something and it's going to gain you a ton of life. I think this is awesome. I think that right there is a removal spell in of itself, even if it is at the combat trick level. Everyone knows how powerful Saddle Up is. The lifesteal really throws a wrench in an erase effect because you're just swinging so much life your direction. Next, draw 2 weapons from your void. So potentially, Fire and Justice do have a lot of weapon synergy. So this could potentially draw you 2 cards, but not just 2 random cards, but rather cards that you value and are going to be playable. So that's a plus. A 2-for-1 is always good. And third mode is transform an enemy unit into a 2/1 goat. So this is another pseudo removal spell. If it's a creature that they're just not a utility creature, or they're not attacking with it, or it's just too big for you to use the pump spell on, you can just essentially polymorph it into a 2/1 goat, which, they'll still have a body, but let's say it's a 7/7 flying overwhelm dragon. You just significantly downgraded it to the point where you pretty much got rid of it. So I like the versatility in Display of Honor. I feel like it gets rid of everything. If they have a utility creature that's really annoying that you can't deal with, unblockable, or has some kind of special ability, bam, you can get rid of it as well. And like I said, it draws you cards. So I think Display of Honor is fantastic. I gave Display of Honor a 5. It's just straight up all around good in every situation. It's just great. I like it a lot. Moving on, we have Display of Ambition. This is Fire Justice Primal, or Fire Justice Shadow, correction. And mode 1, your units get +1 and Overwhelm. Of note, it doesn't say this turn, so it's just permanent. Wow, that's really good. I missed that the first time I read it, I guess. So yeah, that's great. Next, we have draw 2 units from your void and take 2 damage. So once again, same thing as the honor one, except instead of weapons, we're drawing straight up units, which the 2 damage is borderline negligible if you're getting back 2 solid creatures or 2 solid units, one a utility creature unit or a flyer or a bomb. Like, now you're really talking value. So that's absolutely wonderful. And then last one, kill an enemy unit with 5 health or more. So it's a little bit limited on the removal aspect of it. The first ability is great when you're ahead. Absolutely wonderful. You can really kind of, especially if you have beefy creatures, you can get in there and just kind of stunt or go wide. Getting 2 of your best units back is huge. I don't think the 2 life is that big of a downside. And then killing a large unit, it is somewhat limited. So that's why I gave it a 4 instead of a 5, because the removal aspect of it is slightly limited, but it is always going to kill a unit that matters. So I think that's a solid pick. So Display of Ambition gets a 4 from me. Next up, we have Display of Vision. This is Time Justice Shadow. Mode 1, enemy units get a -1/-1 this turn. Could help you win combat, could take out some stuff, could kill a lot of 1 toughness creatures and things like that. Units. Mode 2, play a power card of your choice from your deck. So it's ramp. You are playing the power card. It is fixing. It lets you pick any power card you want. It is a fastball, so you can do this in combat to trigger empowered abilities. So that's really useful. And the last one is kill an attachment on an enemy. So it destroys relic weapons, relics, and things like that. So that's useful as well. I think the fact that it doesn't have a straight up way of killing a unit or dealing with it is a bit of an issue. The ramp is good. It's in the colors that want it. Killing attachment is relevant. There's a lot of relics in this set. That being said, I think it's more medium than it is above average. So I gave Display of Vision a 3. I could be wrong later on. Maybe the ramp / kill attachment is bigger than I think. But right now, yeah, I gave it a 3. It's the least exciting of the displays. And the last display we have is of Knowledge. This is Time Primal Shadow. Mode 1, put an attacking enemy unit on the bottom of an enemy deck, which for all intents and purposes is cleanly removing the unit. As of right now, there's no way to shuffle your deck, or I don't think there's a card to get something from the bottom of your deck, except for that card that we saw that only mills it and puts into the void. So I think that is a solid removal spell. Only problem is, the only requirement is that the unit is attacking, which in most cases are probably the ones you want to get rid of. Next, mode 2 is draw a relic from your deck. All right, it's a tutor, but once again, we really want to have a bomb relic or something that really impacts the game or makes our deck kind of synergize and tick and come together for that to be of value. But it is a tutor. And last, give one of your units +2 attack and quick draw. So we've seen this card before. It's a solid combat trick, helps you win combat most of the time. It's hard for your opponent to kind of play around that. So, and you have the diversity of it. So it gives you a mode to use on defense and a mode to use on offense, which is great. And then the middle tutor is kind of like the least exciting one of it. That being said, once again, I think it has the ability 2 different ways of removing creatures or units. So I gave Display of Knowledge a 4. Yep. So great. Displays are fantastic. I think they're great payoffs for going 3 colors. You just have to make sure you have the influence fixing to make it happen. All right. And now the last card. We're finally there for the uncommon. This is the gray or artifact or neutral color. And we have Makeshift Barrier. This is a 0/5 engine for 3 power. It has endurance, which is a little odd just because 0 power or 0 attackers can't attack. But obviously, maybe you synergize and pump it somehow, etc., etc. And then it has more text. It says pay 3 power to transform Makeshift Barrier into Whirly Twirly. So Whirly Twirly is a 2/2 flying engine for 3 power, which obviously you're not going to cast it because it comes into play as the barrier. And it has a special ability. You can pay 3 to transform Whirly Twirly into a makeshift barrier. So I think this card is just fine. It has some flexibility and versatility, so it gains some points there. If you're on defense, you can leave it as the 0/5 and make your blocks and stuff like that. And then when you're ready to, you can transform it into the 2/2 flyer and kind of get in there. So I think that's okay. That being said, you know how I feel about 0 attack defenders. They just don't incentivize your opponent to stop attacking. They just keep swinging and realize they're going to do slightly less damage. So that being said, you could pump it early on as the blocker, and then when it transforms, you put the 2/2 sword on it, so it's a 2/7 blocker, and then later on you can make it a 4/4 flyer and get in there. But I'm not excited, so I gave Makeshift Barrier a 3. All right, well, another long one, but that was the Defiance Set 5 Uncommon review. Once again, I appreciate everyone tuning in and listening. I hope you got something out of this. It helped you with your drafts, kind of increase your win percentage a little bit. I am once again Jedi from EJ, Eternal Journey, the podcast. You can catch us on Twitter, Patreon, and YouTube on EJ, the podcast, where I have draft videos and sealed videos and up there. You can watch me stream live on Twitch, Jedi_EJ. And then if you have any comments for us, hit me up at ejthepodcast@gmail.com. Definitely, I'll be tuning in, listening stuff. Let me know what you like about the show, what you don't, and we will keep on putting better and better content. I'm still trying to find a co-host to help me kind of go back and forth, and hopefully you guys don't get tired of my voice. But yeah, lastly, I want to go ahead and thank Limited Resources once again. They are the Magic the Gathering limited content providers, Marshall Sutcliffe and Louis Scott Vargas, which is one of the developers of Eternal. Appreciate them giving me the okay to do this podcast and stuff, so definitely check them out if you're into Magic the Gathering. And yeah, see you guys next time.